A very good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon. Would you like me to share the presentation?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's 5 minutes, and country like India, the situation is huge. So I have just pointed out a few details which will help us understand what kind of racism exists and is prevalent in India. So I am Joy Tudu. I belong to the Santal tribe, and collectively with other tribes we are called as Adivasis, which means the first settlers. And the total tribal population of India accounts for about 100 million. Yes, you heard me correct. We are a huge country. And I'm here to present the situational analysis of the forms of racism in the context of indigenous peoples. It is interesting to note that the indigenous term is not officially recognized by the government of India does not recognize us as indigenous peoples. But the United Nations, for all of its practical purposes, it does recognize the tribals as the indigenous peoples of India. We are a large group of people divided into different categories, which describes one's identity according to his or her origin and descent. And this is what we are divided in what we call a system that is called a caste system. And the different tiers of division determine our destiny and our mode of survival. For this very reason, the Dalits are forced to work as manual scavengers till date, although India has banned this practice way back in 2013. Now, being an Adivasi in India is a struggle for existence and largely remain vulnerable to all forms of discrimination and exploitation. The huge influx of non-Adivasis in our region has witnessed a long-standing history of exploitation and subjugation. So now let me come to the point, racism and what it means to us as Indians. It will be very interesting for you to listen to this, because we were trying to frame what could be, in what best possible words we can put down the word racism in or define it. So in India, it is a classic example of a systematic, deliberate historical injustice program that is being practiced and propagated for several thousand years. Racism is inherited, inbuilt, practiced, and glorified in this country. It is a religious belief and doctrine to believe that one community is superior than the other, and thus entrusts and empowers certain group of people to behave differently to other groups of people. In India, every community discriminates the other, and the Adivasis and the Dalits fall right at the bottom of this strata, facing the most of it coming from every other community who thinks and are being repeatedly told that they are superior to us. Now you might think that despite of such a complex situation, what is the government and the lawmakers doing? We have formulated excellent laws that are helping us defend the loot of our land and natural resources. We have laws to defend our dignity, but the main problem lies in the prejudices that has been implanted in the minds of the people who think they are superior than the others and continue to discriminate others and glorify their ill doings. Now, as an Indian, when you ask me about racism, it is so much within us and in our day-to-day life that we experience it every day. And sometimes it's not also, it is an thing that has been imbibed in, it's an ideological warfare that we have been focusing on, or we have been targeted that this is this way. Although this is totally man-made, and it has a purpose of certain things of dividing people into some categories to fulfill some of their motives. But because it is coming from a religious doctrine or a belief, this has been implanted in the minds of the people, and this will they will never forget it. When we talk about elimination of this kind of practices, I'm afraid in how many generations the Indians will take to wipe off this caste system from their head. Because until the Durban conference, India as a country was denying that there is no untouchability or Dalits in India. But after the Durban conference, it was a large eye-opener to the world. And that's where the debate about Dalits came into being, and much more participation from the civil society organizations came into practice. And that has been the struggle of the CSOs and the international NGOs and the UN at large. But I'm hopeful that this advocacy on part of the UN and the CSOs together will definitely make a difference and we can show the world the real picture of what the people back home in India are facing. The Adivasis are the important thing that we are struggling is the recognition as the first settlers, or the Adivasi name itself suggests as the early settlers. But the India, despite having signed the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, it went on to say that no, we don't have indigenous peoples in India. We only have scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So this is a very diplomatic answer by our government, but we keep fighting on our advocacy and in all our programs, and thankfully the UN does recognize us as the indigenous peoples of India. So this is in a nutshell. I tried to project what racism and its forms in this glorious country. I'm sure many of you are aware of the issue of the Dalits, but the Adivasi diaspora is still neglected in many of the programs of the UNs and also the WCC. But thankfully, this time the WCC inclusion of Indigenous Peoples Desk and the programs, we see a much more programmatic focus on Adivasis. So thank you for your time and thank you for this opportunity.